And welcome once again back to Black Greek Speak. You know, usually I'm very excited about talking about certain topics that we have, but this is one of these topics that we're going to discuss today that I'm really very apprehensive about because of, one, so much of the conversation that is going on right now about the Affordable Care Act that we get to hear in snippets called Obamacare. I like to say Obama cares, but in that, this is really a harder kind of conversation that I wanted to have about HIV, AIDS, and health awareness, and the African American community in particular, but in our nation in general. You are always able to join us in this conversation on Black Greek Speak on Facebook by liking us, and you can like us on there, and you can join the thread, and you can also dial us here at the studio at 800-970-8716 if you want to join the conversation that way. Listen, I am so glad to have with me a very good friend of mine who I've known for, I'm not going to say how many years because that will really tell both of our ages. And, yeah, we won't do that, but let's just say we've a long time. Dina Gray. So, Dina, I appreciate you being here. Hello.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I appreciate you coming. And also, I have with me Tunisia Bernard, who is representing the ladies of Zeta Phi Beta. They have some things going on in the Houston area in regards to health awareness and advocacy that I want to make sure that she has an opportunity to also talk to us about. But, Tunisia, I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Wow, I appreciate that. Listen, y'all just relax because this is kind of an intense conversation that we're about to have. And, you know, usually in Black Greek Speak, we kind of have like a real kind of light moment. But this is a really heavy moment for me.
Okay.
And part of the reason that this is a heavy moment, and I'm gonna give a little bit of my own experiences, is that I have very good friends, close friends of mine, who are HIV and HIV positive, and I have some friends who have passed away from the AIDS virus. And I remember a very good friend of mine, when he told me that he was HIV positive, he told me 3 years afterwards, after he had received contact with the disease. And I asked him, why did he wait so long to tell me about this situation? And he said to me, because there was something that I had said at the initial moment that he was going to tell me about it, and I made a statement about choices and carelessness. And he said at that moment he got scared and he decided not to tell me because he did not want to lose my friendship. At that time when he told me that, I had to get off the phone with him. I said, I need to call you right back. And I got off the phone and I cried because this was a brother who I felt like I could lean on in my deepest and darkest hours. And when his moment had come, I blew it. Right. So when I hear these conversations about Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, and some of the conversations that we're talking about when we're talking about health and health awareness, I take it very personal because I think that there's some things that we're missing in the conversation. And so I hope that in this conversation that we could kind of fill those gaps. And Dina, part of the reason that I invited you here, because we're going to have a larger conversation about health and health awareness. And I know Tunisia Bernard, you all are having a health awareness or health.
It's a health fair.
Health fair.
That's correct.
In Houston, and we're going to talk about that so individuals who are in the city of Houston can go and really participate in that, and it's free.
Yes, it is.
And we need to think about that because free health care,
that's correct.
free helps. But Dina, I invited you here because you are very active in positive community and HIV and AIDS community, and I wanted to ask you to kind of share how you got involved in, before we even get into the discussion of some of the specifics, but how did you get involved in this issue on AIDS and HIV?
And, it's been almost 22 years, so the story is getting it's getting further and further back in memory.
Right.
But I mean, real simple. I was actually attending the University of Houston. We were all going to school together.
Right.
Go Cougs. And I heard from a girlfriend who called me and said, you know, what women say to each other. We always started off with, ooh, girl. I mean, that's how we tell a story.
Right.
That's what
Right.
she said. She
My
said,
grandmother and my mother are beauticians, so I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm used
it
to
sounds
that.
familiar,
Yeah,
right?
I'm familiar with that.
So we started with ooh, girl, and she, you know, told me that she heard, and I got to put certain words in quotes because
Right.
they're relevant, because you're not supposed to tell people's HIV status,
Right.
but we know it happens. But she heard that someone I had, quote unquote, dated, you know, right, another word in quotes,
Right.
that person was HIV positive, and at the time in the criminal justice system. So, you know, what should have been anger, rage, and, you know, all that screaming, yelling, I couldn't do much because they were incarcerated. It's
Right.
like kicking somebody. Why? So that's how I ended up going to the University of Houston Health Center and got requested a test. They looked at me as if, why are you here? I mean, mind you, this was 1991.
Right. Right.
And they didn't see a lot of us, you know, just
Right.
young black colored people
Right.
weren't coming in droves until probably around 2003, 2004. We started showing up more in the numbers. But I went and got tested, and the doctor was probably way more surprised than me at the diagnosis. And, you know, she told me I was positive there. So, I mean, I'm very grateful to, you know, just places where medical services are provided that you
Right.
just wouldn't really think about. And a college campus is the best place to get medical care.
Yes, and it is.
And I did. So.
And I'm glad to, you know, and that kind of experience on a college campus says a lot,
Yeah,
right? It says a
absolutely.
lot. It says a lot about where we have access, right,
Mm-hmm.
and where we have opportunity to even begin to start to understand how to address our health and health issues, right? And
Right.
so, listen, we're going to really talk about some other things on the other side of that. If you want to join the conversation with us, you can do so by liking us on Black Greek Speak on Facebook or dialing 800-970-8716 more with Black Greek Speak.
Spanning the globe. MJ. You're listening to MJWJ. Global Radio Network. The Feel Good Talk Radio Network. The Feel Good Talk Radio Network.
And once again, you're with us here on Black Greek Speak. We're talking about AIDS and HIV and health awareness within the African-American community. If you want to, as always, you can like us on Facebook at Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith and join the conversation, the thread on there. Or you can also dial in if you have a comment or a question that you want to ask at 800-970-8716. Dina, I want to kind of follow up on something that you had said, because I remember when you had initially told me that you had you were positive, and I think the thing that threw me off was, once again, I knew you for years, and we were doing what we do as college students, and and none of us knew, sitting up there in the African American Studies room, and that you were dealing with that issue, and it would have been very fresh, right? So I didn't,
Absolutely.
I think I done gave my age now, didn't I? So, but.
No, we're clear.
We're clear. But what I am concerned about is that conversation, that as all the things that we were talking about, that was not one that we ever
Sure.
approached.
Yeah.
And to me, as African Americans, I am kind of in that gauge of what was the problem? Why couldn't we have that conversation?
I mean, that's a question you can actually ask today.
Right.
You know, why aren't we further along in reducing the number of new infections or providing care to individuals who are living with HIV? And, you know, there are a lot of reasons why. I mean, you can start off with the big ones: stigma, discrimination,
Right.
you know, all of those real heavy pieces, things that would make your friends and mine feel hesitant about exposing themselves.
Right.
I think my most resonating example of it is when we talk about our who's infected, right? So we're talking about men and women, and we're talking about sex.
Right.
And then the next layer is, who are men and women having sex with? Okay,
Right.
they're having it with men and women. And I always ask young girls, young women in particular, you know, if you're trying to have a conversation about, you know, your sexual history or your sexual issues, how do you want your partner to respond? And so if a man who may have gone through the criminal justice system, or on Thursdays, that was just the night he chose to be with another man, for whatever that reason, if he says that to you, young lady, are you going to allow him the grace to be who he is in that place and space, and allow him to, are you going to receive that, and are you ready for that? Because if you really want to talk about sexual experience, then we need to really sit down, put on a seatbelt, and have a serious conversation, because HIV is really just a symptom of a totally different problem.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the reasons why I opened up the show with Calvin Butts, Reverend Butts, because we have to really think about what are some of the prescriptions that are really guiding the way we think about and communicate about our health and health awareness, right? And, part of the thing that I thought about was, this is Black Greek Speak. We're in these organizations. We're talking about how we forge bonds and relationships and a brotherhood and sisterhood and leadership. Did you find that being in the sorority, did you find that did you feel the freedom of talking to even at least your line sisters, your sorority? I mean,
well, when I first was diagnosed, I actually made 2 phone calls from the doctor's office. One was to one friend, one was to another, neither one of which were in a sorority. But it was only because I hadn't engaged in real activity with the sorority at that time. I had already pledged, and so one of my bigger fears was, oh no, I'm going to be the only positive chick in Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'll be the only one in America, right? And I don't want to make that little mistake of being the only stain on the pretty pink and green.
Right.
So that was a fear of mine until I made the choice to be me, and y'all deal with it. I'm not about to deal with that. Y'all deal with it. And what I received in response was not only a healthy relationship with my organization, but a healthy relationship with my friends that I already had. And so I didn't push it though, because at that time it was more living, managing, dealing, understanding for myself than it was to do it for other people. But over the years, as I became more of an advocate in the community, the fraternal and the sorority organizations have been beyond receptive to engaging in activities and having me involved in it across the board, not just AKA, but across the board.
That's awesome.
And the college students, I'm very, very proud to say, between TSU, U of H, Rice University, all of our schools that have fraternity and sororities on them, they are doing health services, because I'm always on campus in the fall or in the spring. Right. So they're doing it. And I think I want to commend us for what we're doing, but, like we talked about earlier, more. We can still do more.
And this doing more, right, Tanisha, is what one of the reasons that I'd imagine that the Lambda Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta is hosting this health fair. Is that
That's correct.
This part of this doing more. First of all, tell me the health fair. Tell me about the health fair. When it's going to be and where?
Okay, the health fair will be Saturday, October the 19th, from 10 to 2 a.m. It is located at the Palm Center Business Technology Center, which is located on 5330 Griggs and MLK.
So that's Griggs and MLK in
Griggs
Houston.
and MLK, that's correct, in Houston. We're going to have health screenings. We're going to have workshops. We're going to be talking about prenatal care, which is one of those things that we tend to not talk about, especially on the undergraduate chapters and on the undergraduate campuses. We need to understand that one of those things, like we're talking about HIV and AIDS, prenatal care, those things are very important that we tend to forget about.
You're right, because I was reading the CDC. I was just going to the website, just kind of looking at some things. It was astonishing to me that not only the leading causes of death in the African American community being heart disease and then stroke and diabetes, but then we are the leading ethnic group when it comes to infant mortality deaths. We are the leading group when it comes to new AIDS and HIV cases since in 2010, and that's starting at the age of 13. And so, I mean, people think about, okay, well, we're having this health fair, right? You all are hosting this health fair, but this is really a community cause.
It's a community cause, and it's free. We're going to have door prizes. We're going to have everything and all the informations that, diabetes. We're going to have workshops on maintaining diabetes, on screenings of high blood pressure, cholesterol, everything that the community needs to know about that we tend to just put on the backside and not really, dive deep off into it.
Here's a question. I'm just curious. As you all are hosting the health fair, and I know that it is free, is it for all age groups?
It is for all age groups, all ethnic groups. It is for the entire community, anyone of all ages. We will be having the youth there. The youth will be there as well so that they can get some information. When I say youth, I'm talking about ages 5, 6, 7, and that's right. Just for the health screening that we will have for that age-appropriate persons at that time as well.
So now let's say somebody finds out that they have some issues, right? They have high blood pressure. I remember that there was a gentleman at the health fair that we had for CAPA during conclave. It got so bad. They had to say they needed to take him to the hospital right then and right there. And that was, and somebody's like, if we did not have that person could have went home. I mean, do y'all have those kind of resources so that if people are getting screened,
all of our vendors that are there are subject matter experts. They work in that field. Okay. And they will be prepared to give you the information confidentially and be able to talk with you, and whatever is needed at that time, they will be sure to take care of that matter at that point.
And that's Saturday, tomorrow.
And this is tomorrow.
All right, at 10 a.m. Listen, this is still Black Greek Speak. You can still like us on Facebook, and you can also call us on 800-970-8716. More with Black Greek Speak in a moment.
Spanning the globe. You're listening to MJWJ, Global Radio Network. The Feel Good Talk Radio Network. The Feel Good Talk Radio Network.
And you're back with us on Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith. You can always, once again, I would like to tell you, like us on the Facebook page at Black Greek Speak, or you can dial in at 800-970-8716. Tanisha, you was talking about that your health fair for the Lambda Zeta chapter for Zeta Phi Beta is going to be at Saturday, October 19th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
That's correct.
It's free.
It is free.
So people can come and get their health screen. Bring your children.
That's
got
correct.
Children. You know these children. Bring them. Are y'all going to have dentists there? I'm just curious. I'm just curious. All right.
We will have all
bring
the
your
medical
children.
Field. All the medical field we will have there.
Bring your children. I'm tired of looking at children.
Breast cancer awareness.
We're here. I just had talked to my godson, and he let me know that his mother has been diagnosed with breast cancer.
We even have Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have, medical insurance companies. So we will have a variety of vendors, and we're so thankful. We have over about 20 vendors that will be there, and we're thankful that they volunteered to come out.
And that's at the Palm Center, the Business Technology Center. For those of you who are in Houston, Texas, this is in Houston, Texas. So if you're listening to this in New York, this is not the Zeta chapters in New York. So this is in Houston, Texas, at 5330 Griggs Road, Houston, Texas. And this is a really big issue. And Dina, we was talking about like health in the larger sense. And part of this that concerned me was, once again, as we're talking about this free health care, and they were talking about Obamacare, right? And I always say that means Obama cares. And because we have to care about people who don't have access to healthcare. And you had made a statement that I thought was resonated with me, and that is the reason you were able to even begin to look at your status and address your status is that you were on a college campus, which offered this kind of service. And it amazes me how people don't recognize how many of us don't even have access to prenatal care, screenings for HIV. People wouldn't even recognize the different health issues that come from just because you don't have a dentist and you don't go to the dentist. And here's my question: besides the fact of the stigma of some of the health issues that we're talking about, I guess I'm trying to figure out what is the motivation that keeps people from wanting other people to have the.
I post on Facebook and try to get responses to what's going on all the time. Why is this an issue? But part of it is, I think we have to be okay with saying what it is we need and not feeling I'm less than because I need it. that seems silly to me, but that's how we do tend to think. I see it a lot in, clients that we deal with. We don't want to, upset, it any more than what it's already upset. I got HIV. Do I have to go and do what now? It's right. A lot. And the reality is that the system of care for those, individuals of us right. who cannot afford, the fancy-dancy health care, I do have to utilize other resources, and I have it's 20 years. You're not going to keep your insurance for 20 years. Let's be clear. That's not going to happen. You're going to go in and out of different systems. And I think we need to realize that a diagnosis of HIV can take you from middle class to poor like that.
It was amazing to me, the number of friends that I found out. That poor. We're black Greek speak. That means you went to college, so they're gonna get on us if we don't exactly. Sound like that.
Exactly.
But what was amazing to me was the number of people that I knew who had HIV and AIDS who had to get into trial programs because they could not afford the treatment.
Sure.
So that meant you had to become, for lack of a better kind of metaphor, a laboratory experiment.
Absolutely.
Just so that you could get the kind of treatment. And when people start to argue about this Affordable Care Act, I don't think that Tanisha, I don't think that people think about how difficult it is for people who are really sick to get here.
Mm.
Well, the thing that alarms me is those persons that are, I won't say against it, but have a lot of conversation about it, are the ones that are not struggling to get health care.
Right.
They don't have family members that right now are ill and sick and cannot get health care.
Right. Or they're older and they are white and they have Medicare, or they have already tapped into pension systems and other sources of revenue that support them.
And I hate doing that because it sounds like we throw this word out that I'm about to use out just like willy-nilly with no kind of real kind of foundation to it. But to me, the conversation, honestly, as we're talking about healthcare in this country, seems really racist to me.
Sure.
Because when I hear people make statements like, well, they're trying to force us to do, and I'm trying to figure out who is the us. Because the people that I know, I was from Fort Worth, Texas, the people that I know who was sitting up in John Peter Smith Hospital were needing that. It's crazy.
But we're not coming out and saying in opposition to that. It's kind of like during this whole government shutdown, everybody kept saying the Tea Party, but I don't really remember seeing a lot of actual Tea Party people talking.
Exactly.
And it's like, where are you? Why aren't you arguing your point? Same thing with healthcare and the utilization of services. You have people who have multiple issues. You have people who may have a chronic health issue that causes a level of disability. You have people who have mental health issues that create chronic mental instability,
right.
And then inability to manage life properly. You have people who are struggling with, other situations. For women, we have children,
right.
And we have, home management. For men and women, we have returning citizen status and adjusting to that. So none of this, our healthcare issues, exist in a vacuum. We don't just have one issue. We have multiple issues, and we have family with multiple issues. And so if we don't stand up and say, for all of you who don't think that we need it, come let me show you how to manage. Let me show you that it takes 8 hours to get through Thomas Street for one doctor visit in a lab. Let me show you how this
what
works.
That is. But,
right.
and to me, that's the issue. Because at a certain level, you have to dehumanize people in order to justify.
Because it's so many people who need the care.
Right. I'm hearing the argument of why the Affordable Health Care Act is problematic, because people can't get on. The servers are overwhelmed. And I'm thinking to myself, well, isn't that the reason? Shouldn't that be the indication that we should have some type of health care? Because so many, like they're saying, well, the problem is, and this was interesting to me, the problem is, look at it. They don't even have servers up. And we knew that the government could not handle this. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, but doesn't that tell us, or at least incentivize us, about the number of people,
right.
Tanisha, that need health care? And I'm trying to figure out, and you talk about we're not present. That's why we have Black Greek Speak, because I am curious, and that's why I invited Tanisha to come on and talk about the fact that they are hosting, because we need a collective voice that says, no, I don't know about who your us's are, but we's over here, you know.
We's liking it.
We's liking
yes,
it. And we don't have that organized voice.
Right.
And I'm curious, Tanisha, as you all are doing this healthcare fair, what prompted you to want to do it, one, and then how do you take that initiative and expand it so that others can begin to take on and help propagate that forward?
Well, what we need to look at is this health fair. One of the big initiatives that we work with March of Dimes, and one of the initiatives we have is Project 39. And Project 39 is stating to basically keep the baby in the womb for 39 weeks and not to have a medically assisted labor.
Wow.
If there's not a medical challenge or an emergency that you need to have your child early, then wait 39 weeks, because there still are some developing stages. And that's one of the things that we're getting out, because a mom could say, I am so tired, I've been holding this baby for so long, but you just wait it out, because although you think that it's been 33, 34 weeks, and I can have my baby now, at some point you don't know just how developed that child is. Therefore, March of Dime tells us, and statistics say, you need to wait to 39 weeks. And that's one of the initiatives that we are speaking of as well. And the more, a lot of people hear health fairs and, it's just a health fair. And we tend to not take advantage of this free screening.
Right.
You spoke about the individual that had high blood pressure and went to that health fair, or whatever the cause may have been. If they did not go that day,
right,
we could have an ending that
he could have had a heart. They said
yes.
that you're at stroke level right now. And they had to rush him to the hospital at that moment, right then and there. And you're right, because part of what people don't get is what I think, Dina, you're talking about, is the interconnectivity of how health and wellness really operates, right? Because when individuals don't recognize that you're having your baby medically assisted early, right, and these developmental stages, you don't recognize, one, what we don't really talk about within certain communities is mental health issues, and you don't recognize how brain development and
that's correct,
and all of these other things.
Sure.
And so when we're wondering why we're having to then put our children on all of these other kind of medications and Ritalin and other things, it was amazing to me when I taught kindergarten for a while. I taught kinder for 3 years. It amazed me the number of students that I had that were medically assisted, and that was, to me, problematic. And we don't see that there's an industry that is making money, because even though they're not caring about the fact that we get health care, here's what some people need to recognize. The one entity that is caring and wants you to do it is the insurance company. And that is why people don't recognize it's not the government who's controlling your health. It is the insurance company.
And one of those things, that's good you said that, because one of those things that we have found is that for Project 39, some insurance companies will not pay for medically induced labor.
Right.
But they don't know that, because the doctors are saying, it's okay. You can go ahead and have the baby now. Baby's healthy. But because you don't know that date of conception,
right,
that's that unknown.
Right.
And that's what we have to get out there. We talk to some of our what we call undergraduates on the campuses. And one of the things that we're looking at is go before you show.
Go before you show. Wow. Yeah.
I like
you
that.
may not know what's going on, but go before you show. That's prevention.
And as you were saying that, it made me think about the fact that all of our fraternities and sororities, we have national models, national service plans, and they filter down. I think we might lack, and in that more phenomenon, I think we lack a unified messaging where, we kind of have a broader idea of what Pan-Hellenic Greek supports,
right,
or initiatives. We're always loving catchy sayings, so go before you show is great. So how do we take all of these, major health issues that are impacting us and unify messages so that there is a larger Greek sound about
exactly
what
because
we value and
because
what we find important.
you made a great point, right? Is that when we're talking about healthcare now, we have people talking on behalf of Tea Party persons, and I don't see Tea Party people around. It is the fact that they have intentionally constructed a way in which they are then going to communicate their message.
Correct.
And we are not, I don't believe, doing a very good job at intentionally constructing a solidified message that communicates in a much more broad and much more vast way.
And if you think about what we have access to that might be the same or better than the Tea Party, is we have membership that ranges from age 18 to 100.
Exactly.
We got membership all over the world. We have membership that men and women. Our membership is so diverse that we could take one message, tackle it 3 different ways, and hit just about 80% of our population.
Exactly. And how do we, but see, the real question then becomes, for me, and Tanisha, I'll ask you, then if that is something we can do, why are we not doing that? Why do you think as Black Greeks we haven't capitalized on taking what your chapter is doing and creating a way in which, as soon as we know that Lambda Zeta is having a health fair in Houston, Texas, somehow that is connected to a larger Black Greek network that then expands that, right? Why do you think we're not there?
And that's a hard question, because you think about that, the Pan-Atlantic Council is just what it is. It's a family. Mm-hmm. Although we have different colors, different letters, we all are in the community doing something for the betterment of the community. And if we all did come together and support one another and spread the word, we'll be dangerous.
We'll be dangerous. One of the things that we talk about here is that I always say when people come here, they link up with me, right? Because we all know that that's a way of talking about when we're online. Mm-hmm. And I often say that part of the thing that we have forgotten is what that linking up symbolically is talking about, right? It is not talking about necessarily hazing, but it is talking about the ability to create an impenetrable barrier when we are all on one accord, right? Like I thought, I made this statement before that when Vashti Murphy, who's the chaplain for Delta Sigma Theta, she preached the day after the Trayvon Martin verdict, and after her sermon, she had the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta stand up on stage, and they linked themselves together as to give that symbol. We're standing here, and we're standing tall. And I think we forget that we're linked up, right? That this is really a way in which we can address that. And I think that we don't recognize on a real way how systematically we are being delinked. Yeah, is that a word? Unlinked. We are just being disconnected. Yeah. And one of those is through health. And you're right, Dina. I agree. I think that there's such a stigma on health and wellness in the African American community.
And it's the stigma is not so much the disease or the issue that you have.
Right.
It's trying to manage it and overcome it.
Right.
That is really a lot of where we find the trial. One of the things that they call HIV, the kids call it HIV, they call it the lick. I mean, I can tell you, when I used to go in juvenile detention centers, before I would tell the kids my status, they would be like, oh, man, I don't know. Nobody got that lick. Okay, I have to just sit here and smile and grin through this.
Right.
And, then go through the process. But I was an educator. So just for normal citizenry, who's not trained to stand there and take a hickey, how hard is it to be revealing? The other part about HIV, and this is my personal platform that I have chosen to step off of everybody else's and add, is that I don't want to talk about HIV anymore, actually. I really want to talk about sexual health.
Right.
I want to know if the girls know what a vagina really looks like. And and you have to say these words in places that they are not said in order for them to get in. And if we don't start having a more thorough and lively and raw
honest
conversation
about
sexual health, I saw a study just recently that was clear. Young girls, African American girls, because they become independent and responsible so quickly, they have a faster capacity to connect with someone to help care for them, which is
Right.
going to, i.e., be an older man. That's a sexual health issue. Ain't got nothing to do with HIV.
HIV
That's
and
about how do I deal with this 13-year-old who I've made overly responsible, overly sexual, and under-educated,
Right.
and exposing them to what causes and what puts them at risk. So we need to change the chatter a bit.
And the conversation needs to
Yeah.
change. The discourse needs to change, and that's part of what Black Greek Speak is about. It really is about changing the discourse. Because
I said vagina before 9 o'clock. I'm
yeah,
excited.
Yeah, you know, vagina, everything. Wow, we got some whole things to say. If there's some words that you want to add to the discourse, look, you can like us on Facebook at Black Greek Speak, or you can dial us, of course, at 800-970-8716. There's a lot more to talk about on Black Greek Speak in a few moments.
Spanning the globe. MJWJ. Global Radio. The MJWJ. Global Radio Network. The Feel Good Talk Radio Network. The Feel Good Talk Radio Network.
And once again, we're back here with Black Greek Speak with Marlon Smith. Listen, you can still always like us on Facebook and join that conversation at Black Greek Speak. You can we still have a little time if you want to dial in at 800-970-8716 and join the conversation there. Dina, you made a great point that and I say this a lot on this show, is that one of the things that I recognize as a scholar, and for those of us who study at the PhD, you learn the value of words and to choose carefully the words that you say and that you write, because those words have meaning. And that when we change the way in which we communicate, there's meaning behind the reason why we change it. You know, one of the things that irritates me is, for instance, when we're talking about racism, or we're talking about the dehumanization of African-American bodies in this country, and then we'll say things like the N-word, right? Once you do that and you change and reconstruct that meaning, you have made some real conscious decisions about how you will think about the degradation of black bodies and the history out of which that body has been constructed socially, right? And so part of the thing that I also recognize is the same thing happens when we talk about sex. When I did my graduate study, on theology of sex, which is how we think theologically through this construction of sex. And what I found out through that study is that we talk about sex. The average person talks about sex the way they wish to be perceived, not the way in which they have it, or in which the way they practice it.
Yeah.
And so part of what we have to begin to deal with then is the perceptions that people have, not only about themselves personally, but how they perceive themselves socially, right? Because good girls don't do that, right? Good girls don't. Right. When I taught kindergarten, one of the things that I had to stop mothers from doing, right? Mothers would come pick up their sons out of my classroom. And this are 5 and 6 year olds. And if they saw a little boy they saw their son sitting with a little girl, one of the first things that they would say is that his little girlfriend? And I'm like, no, it's not his little girlfriend. First of all, he's 6 years old. He don't have any girlfriends in this classroom. But more importantly, you would not come pick up your daughter if she was sitting at a table with a little boy and asked, is that her boyfriend, right? So we don't recognize, mothers don't recognize that you're sexualizing your sons already at a very early age, and you're not educating them then in the construction of that kind of sexual identity, right? So you're right. I think that we have to help change the way in which we have the discourse. And so, Tanisha, I'm going to ask that question. You know, how do we do that in the midst of a health fair? Is that too much to ask to kind of have these kind of conversations in the midst of a health fair?
Well, one thing's about when you're talking about sexuality, that's what I would say a forum. That's a workshop in itself.
Right.
And because of just what you said, you have a lot of parents that don't want to dive off into that with their children. They want to shelter that away from their children, basically of really knowing what's going on in the world. Well, if they shelter their children at home from knowing that, they're going to learn it at school, but they're going to learn it the wrong way. Or they're going to learn it out in the world on the street from their friends who've been taught the wrong way. So when you talk about health fairs, that's one of the things that you want to tend to not dive off into, because you need to have, for one, parental consent. And although you want, even on undergraduate campuses, I love it when I hear that the undergraduates are having forums like sex in my bed and things of that nature. They're really talking about we're talking about.
Really?
And that
we wasn't talking about that when I was...
sexuality and health. And I'm thinking just what you're saying, back when I was in college, that's not something that we had workshops on.
Yeah. No, we didn't.
We called them relationships.
Yeah, we talked about we talked about love between men and women. Venus and Mars, and became one of those popular conversations. Right. But you're right, because I think that there's so many other issues that, you know, and everybody always says of our conversations here at Black We Speak, y'all need 2 hours. We're not going to go to 2 hours. I'm sorry. It's going to stay an hour. But even though I think the website has a statement on there that we're a 2-hour show right now, and this got to be changed. I thought they were hinting at something. I was going to have to tell them, no, we're not going to go to 2 hours. 1 hour. We're 1 hour. But it is a way of at least starting to prick our conscience, right? Because when we start thinking about health, you're right. This is not anymore a conversation about HIV. Even when we talk about prostate cancer, my father was just recently diagnosed and just had surgery last week for prostate cancer. And we've been praying for him. But what we recognized was it was also the way in which we thought about male sexuality.
Absolutely.
And that, because the conversation was not about the cancer. It was about male sexuality.
Male parts.
Parts. Mm-hmm. It was about the functioning and how we were connected to those, right? Mm-hmm. You know, to have a conversation for a man and to say, well, you know, I've been having an erection ever since I was like 12 years old, and now you're telling me that's going away. That's a loss of a certain type of identity that we're not necessarily having another conversation, right? Because then we're in a problem where we're talking about one thing when we need to be talking about something else.
Exactly. It's similar to HIV and breast cancer in women.
Right.
You know, I'm good. You can run up on me constantly and tell me you have HIV. I can handle it. Got you. But now when I have my same HIV client come up to me and say, oh, my God, now I have breast cancer. Oh, goodness. Now I have to figure out how to support you in a different way and make sure that you are receiving that level of care. And that's the critical part when I talk about comorbidities and the fact that we're dealing with multiple issues over time. As people, for example, who have HIV, you know, everyone got excited. We have meds, and we have meds that make you live a long time. Well, guess what happens when you live a long time? Your body get old. Now you got an old body. That's an infected body. That's a tired body. So you have to, you know, I have to know the difference between what I'm supposed to look for at 45 in terms of general health. Then I got to take it over and compare it to what am I supposed to look like with HIV disease, and then I got to flip it and put on what am I supposed to look like as, you know, an African-American woman with high cholesterol, whatever it is. I have to put on all these multiple layers. And one of the things that I think we can do as fraternal and sorority organizations is to be visible on a small level. I mean, we can do the national, but I can be visible by escorting someone to their medical appointment. Wow. I can be visible by, you know, providing transportation. I can be visible by volunteering and being a face that's familiar at an organization that might not necessarily see me.
And you know what? You're right. And one of the things that often we end up here at Black We Speak, we always ask that Kingsian question, which is, where do we go from here? You know, Martin Luther King asked us the question of where do we go from here, and we are asking that question, and that's one of the things that I think you're noting that we're constantly saying here is that representation. Mm-hmm. Because when I go to certain places now, when I go to visit friends who I know are sick in hospital, I'm wearing KSI. And I'm wearing that to break certain kind of stigmas.
Absolutely.
Because when we start visiting and talking about friends who are my friends, particularly when you talk about men who are HIV and AIDS, the first thing that they're doing then is asking about their sexuality, right? And that's not
first wrong move.
Or were they in prison? You know, I work in a prison, and I tell people, well, if you're dating a man who comes out of Texas Department of Criminal Justice, for instance, he knows his status because we test them before they leave. So there are some other conversations that we're not having. So if you tell me, and I've had that happen, you come up and you think that you're positive. Well, I know his status. Did you ask him?
Yeah.
Because I know he knows before he left. And those are the conversations.
And that's the big piece is us being proactive about engaging in our own health care. and our own management. So
we got to do that, and that's the first step,
Yeah.
the first one.
And on another note, but when you ask that question, how is the response from yourself when they say, "Oh, I know. Oh, no, I'm good"?
yeah.
How far do you take that response?
That's another kind of conversation. Look, you can like us on Facebook. I'd like to see what somebody would say about that on Facebook at Black Greek Speaker. Dial us at 800-970-8716. Where do we go from here on? Smith, listen, I want to remind everybody, if you're here in Houston, join the ladies of the Lambda Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated for their health fair. It's going to be tomorrow, Saturday, from 10 a.m. That gives you time to sleep and wake up. Get there at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Palm Center at the Business Technology Center, 5330 Griggs Road in Houston, Texas. Listen, that's in 3rd Ward. You all need to go. And if you're listening, you know some people who need to be there. So let's link up. Let's help everybody. And so we have that opportunity to do so. Then I just kind of want to end with that. And one, I want to say, Sister, I so thank you for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you, honey.
Because it's just brave, and
I applaud you.
Yeah, it's brave. We have to give flowers where flowers are due, and
Thank you.
And that is awesome.
Same to you.
You know,
no doubt.
Well,
and that's the beauty of it, is that we actually do. And I mean, and I have absolutely no problem saying that I do.
Right.
None. Because you gotta
you do.
praise it.
You gotta do, and you gotta give that. And Tanisha, I really do appreciate the ladies of Zeta Phi Beta at the Lambda Zeta chapter really thinking about our communities in this way, because it is so important that we really help our people understand. You know, I'm about to start an advocacy, getting people signed up. If you got to be on the computer for 8 hours, you'll stand in a line outside the club for 3, trying to get in the club to only be there for an hour.
Or to get the new Jordans.
Jordans.
2 days.
Yeah. You'll stand outside of the Apple store trying to get an iPad.
Yeah.
So no.
So stand in line and get your health
Get
screening.
your health screening. Do it. You know, you can't take that iPad with you, and that's their money. So you don't get anything out of that. Your life is what God has given you. So don't give that up to somebody else. Don't sell yourself cheaply. So I do appreciate that. Listen, we always appreciate people coming in here and giving us an opportunity to inform our communities. If you want to learn more, if there are people who are in Houston, Dina, who want to know their status, where can they go? How can they get that information?
Oh, absolutely. Many of our nonprofit organizations do HIV testing. So for Houstonians, I recommend that they contact the City of Houston Health and Human Services. There's a main number, 794-5100, I want to say is the main number, but it's the Health Department HIV program. They'll give you a list of organizations. If you're in North Houston, there's Positive Efforts, St. Hope Foundation, Legacy Community Health. There are a lot of organizations, including Memorial Hermann Hospital and LBJ and Ben Taub, that provide HIV testing. So it's no longer hard to get. It's free. Most of the time, if you want the mouth swab or the finger prick, it's 20 minutes, and it's pretty much the same across the country. Contact your local health department, and they will give you a list of resources for testing.
And you cannot now be denied for health coverage if you are HIV positive.
Yay, pre-existing conditions.
People don't recognize that HIV and AIDS was a pre-existing condition that people were being denied health care and health coverage because of that. So we need to stay informed. Once again, Tanisha Bernard with Zeta Phi Beta Sorority and Dina Gray, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, and my great friend from the University of Houston. I so appreciate you all coming out.
Thank you for doing this.
I really do. And once again, we always say, a friend of mine and a mentor always said to me, and I always repeat it, is that everyone can't do everything.
But if everyone does
something, everything will get done. So once again, thank you for linking up with us. We'll see you again on Black Greek Speak.
Thank you.